welcome to an Everyday Canines video. In this video about the A-frame, I want to talk to you about the apex behaviour. So we're not looking in this episode at dogs that are going slow over the A-frame. That's a training thing. It's not for the safety purposes. That's not to worry about. The dog's not going to hurt itself doing that. I want to talk about the flip side of the coin, which is where the dog powers over the apex so hard that they are actually coming up and leaping over the apex. So they're probably coming up really high like this, leaping over, and then they land deep. Some people actively encourage this in their training and driving their dogs on because they think it's showing the dog as really powering. Also, it means the dog can probably land and then just one more stride and often they've hit the contact, so it looks faster. The problem with this style of leaping, and you may have even seen it if you've watched Crufts and other things, is when the dog lands, because of its momentum, it flicks its back up. It's coming down, it flicks, and then it has to regain control to get on. First of all, that's not a controlled way over the A-frame, and this is a dangerous obstacle in the sense that it is tall and your dog has got to be controlled to go over it. Secondly, when that dog flicks its back at that force, it is potentially injuring its back. You can end up with a dog with a sore back or a dog with serious injury to that back because of this constant motion if it's being encouraged to do that over and over again. Thirdly, a dog can do that so hard, especially a light dog, they can actually flip themselves either onto their sides or completely over, and we can see how that would cause an injury quite easily. Now, here's my fourth consideration. When that dog leaps and it spends all that time in the air really high over there, and yes, it lands low, you're actually losing time rather than gaining it. First off, you're spending too much time in the air. Anytime you're spending that much time in the air, it's a waste there. Secondly, when that dog hits, because it's out of kilter and out of balance, it then has to regain itself. It's falling in effect. It's not striding. So it now has to regain control before it can carry on. It's a readjustment. That is not fast. Anytime your dog has got to readjust itself, it's not fast. A nicer behaviour is where the dog comes and it does I'd call a little bop over the apex. So it uses very limited room over the apex. It's just skimming the apex, but it also lands lower. So I would say it lands here. It's a little bop. It's then running and motoring. It hasn't fallen, had to readjust itself. It hasn't lost all its momentum in the air because it's flown over there. It's now able to carry on. People think this looks slower, less driven. It's not. But what you're gaining is you're gaining the element of control. You're not losing time here, and your dog, importantly, your dog is much safer from injury. It's not going to be doing that thing with its back and flicking its back. And when it comes down, it will be in control of its body. It will be moving in a proper stride. So if I show you what that should look like with Swift, because I had to retrain Swift. Swift had to be retrained from being encouraged to power over, which caused me concerns, to then going back to just have a toy, there's no food in it. Going back to having this little bop. And you can sometimes teach that with striders and stuff. Let's have a look. Okay, ready? Hop, 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 hop. Nice. So now, did you see she wasted absolutely no time over that apex? She didn't take too much air. It was smoother. And yes, she was here before she carried on, but it didn't cost her anything. It came down. And most importantly, she was safe and sound doing that. So that's something I want to put here as something for you to think about and discuss with your trainer when you're looking at your dog's behaviour on the A-frame, especially over the apex. I know some people are training this big thump over the A-frame. They think it's, more driven and drivey. Now, if people want to do that, they can do that. But I would advise you not to, and I would say to you, if you go to a trainer that is encouraging that, really think about that behaviour. I suggest you film that behaviour and look at what your dog is doing as it's going over and how it's flicking. It's obviously going to be different with every dog and different sizes, but just think about that. Because at the end of the day, we're doing this as a sport and a hobby, and it's for fun. I don't want to break my dog for the sake of snazzy looking over, going over the A-frame, getting a lot of air. And because sometimes it will happen by accident because the dog gets over aroused and runs. But if we train this sensible behaviour, then we're trying to minimise any potential risks. So I hope that makes sense, and because it's always up to you how you do these things, but I hope that makes sense to you. And I hope you've enjoyed this everyday canine video, and if you have, you might like to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Lots of stuff coming out there all the time. And you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, and I hope to see you all again very, very soon.